Guys, welcome back to the Camps channel. I'm Justin Davis. Today, it's all about flying in weather. It's crazy everywhere right now, from East Coast to West Coast. Pacific Northwest is completely saturated. It's completely wet out here, and we're having another storm. Go figure. Buffalo's under about 7 feet of snow right now, and more is on the way. So if you're on the East Coast, man, it's really hard to fly or even just have power and heat right now. It's totally insane out there. But today, because we have so much weather going on everywhere, this video is sort of about flying in weather and finding a perfect quad to be able to take out in some wetter conditions if you just must fly and you want to go out and do that. You know, when you're flying in wet weather, sometimes the signal isn't quite as good because of the air moistures, the moisture in the air. The particles do block some 2.4 and some of the 915 megahertz frequencies, so it kind of bounces around and sometimes you can lose signal. So it's nice to have a quad with GPS on there. If you have this quad, you have a backup with GPS. If you lose signal, it'll level itself out and start to return to home. So that's really, really important. Now, the next thing that's important for flying in weather is that everything is conformal coated on here, which we do have some stock from the factory conformal coating on this quad. It's not a waterproof quad completely. They don't claim it to be, but we're going to test it today in some very wet, moist conditions. I'm going to trust that this stock conformal coating from the factory is going to get us through today's flight test. But most importantly, also, we have side skirts down the whole side of the quad, covering up from the camera over the flight controller and the ESCs. The flight controller has its own case over top of it, which I'm going to show you coming up. And we have side skirts in the back covering up the receiver as well. I have TBS Crossfire, GPS, Caddx Vista has been now updated to run my goggles too, and I'm pretty confident that this one will be just fine in the weather today. So let's go ahead and fire it up and see what this one's all about.
Let me hear ya. You say you want that thing, minus me say want that thing plus. 2 shots in the air, pop, pop, watch your ass. If I pull the trigger, we only gonna get war. So find a different way, we gonna set that place. So we say, oh, we only wanna make hopla, we don't wanna go war. We only wanna make hopla, we don't wanna go war. Only make hopla, we don't wanna go war. So only make hopla, we don't wanna go. Yo, 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 yo. I dey go away.
All right, guys, welcome back from the flight test. Now let's check out this premium quad from STP Hobby. And I mentioned before in my live stream, I thought STP Hobby was just another one of those companies that Banggood kicked out that was like, you know, super, almost like Ishin quality. Man, was I wrong. When I got this quad, I'm thinking that this is like Diatone reinventing themselves or something. This is along the lines of, say, Diatone quality or T-Motor. Very, very nice stuff. And they have Rush everything on here. So, you know, maybe this is Rush FPV's quad bind and fly company. STP seems to be really nice. So I have to say, like, the guy that's my contact is Chris, and Chris sent us the primo version of this one. So this one's around $540. It's not cheap for the HD one. I feel like it's pretty expensive for a 5-inch, but I did update it, so now it works with my goggles too. The analog version's around $340. But if you guys really want to get this one to kind of fly in some weather conditions, I'm happy that it came back today. It didn't brown out above a tree and just fall in the drink, because the ground was really saturated right now. Out here in the Pacific Northwest, we're having another storm. It's just completely crazy. I think it's been raining for like 2 weeks out here. So today, this was the perfect quad to fly. And the reason that I say it's the perfect quad to fly today is because, well, it's freaking wet outside. But secondly, this quad not only has conformal coating front to back, the Vista is also conformal coated and encased. It does really well in moist conditions. We have side panels all the way down. They didn't cover up the Vista in the back though to give it more airflow. They also allow you to do different colors. You can check out STP Hobby's website, and they do have also some blue and yellow side skirts. And again, this is very similar to Diatone. This almost looks like the same type of setup here. It just has the standoff post clip right there, and you can take them off by hand. Now the flight controller in here, it's tuned really well. The stock flight controller tune from Betaflight, I left everything stock today as always, and I tried to show you the OSD one here as well. You can get the return home arrow, and again, I have a tutorial on how to get Betaflight OSD working on your DJI goggles. It is super simple now, and it only takes a few minutes to do it. It's kind of crazy. So no crazy updates on firmware or anything like that. We're just going to go patch straight through to it. It's going to be super cool. So this is a 30 by 30 F722 flight controller stack on top of 50 amp sport ESCs. So we have also a nice plastic cover covering the flight controller. That's pretty important. We do have conformal coating on the ESCs themselves, which is a very thin layer of conformal coating from the factory, but most ESCs nowadays have a little coating over top of them to keep them from shorting out, just landing in wet grass. I don't know how many quads I've shorted out landing in wet grass, but also once you add one of these side plate bumpers, it basically helps you out with keeping a lot of this moisture coming off the props and being spun straight into the electronics. So that's a big help to keep it from shorting out in the wetter conditions. And they have another side plate skirt on the side on both sides to cover up the receiver as well. If your receiver was more exposed, which most of them aren't, but it does give you protection from scraggle and having your ESC ripped out of there when you do go crashing through the trees if you're trying to freestyle. They do have some venting up here to give you a little bit of airflow through here as well, and more cooling for your VTX in the back. Whether you're running that Rush analog VTX or the Cadex Vista, it's nice that all of this is wide open back here because again, this has some nice conformal coating and casing around the Vista. Most of us don't have a lot of problems with moisture there, but we also have it's like, I think it was a BN22 GPS back here, and I was getting like 12 satellites on this setup. And again, when you're setting this up in Betaflight, your GPS, field test this outside the 300-foot range, and you know, please do uncheck takeoff without a lock. If you have takeoff without a lock checked for GPS, your GPS basically is disabled. So don't do that. I'll leave that checked so that it makes a home lock. You won't be able to arm until it has a home lock. That's the only drawback. Now we also have a large extended Rush left-hand circular polarized antenna, which for me, I really like a lot because it extends well above the battery. And that's, the combination of that and this together, that's what makes this one kind of a medium range 5-inch. Some guys will actually build these types of setups so that they have a 5-inch that they can send up the mountain or down the mountain. You could probably fly around down in canyons with this quad, and it would do just fine with TBS crossfire with that kind of penetration. DJI VTX does really well in any kind of range flying. Now, you guys can't really see it because I didn't take this frame apart, but I also noticed that when I first got the quad, there was TPU right here, and upon further reading, I found out that they have an interlocking system in here with kind of like a big TPU cross in between all these arms, and that gives it a little bit of dampening in here as well to kind of reduce some of the vibration of the quad's power system to the camera. So that really helps out a lot with vibration. And the bottom plate of the quad extends from the front to the back here, covering up the vista. You can see my Immortal T back here. This is the TBS Crossfire Immortal T antenna with my TPU mount for the GPS. It was able to do some skidding on the concrete. It's pretty flat. One thing, I was concerned about was maybe these bumpers would crack in the colder weather because these are injection molded, probably ABS type of material. It's not TPU. So I feel like the good thing about this is you're going to have a better bolt connection to the bottom of your motor. It's not going to wiggle loose. I feel like TPU kind of is gummy and soft, and eventually they tear. So these will be a little more durable, I think, unless they crack up. So that's what it looks like. It's just a solid piece of hard, probably ABS plastic. It also has a little bit of kind of lightening there with taking this middle piece out. Makes them a little lighter, and that's usually what we're looking for. A little lighter quad is better. So also in the box, I got some extra cases, which these appear to be the cases that they give away with their flight controller, the F722 flight controller. This is the manual that goes along with it. It's the Blade F7 flight controller. And it has a schematic in here. It has all the specs and the diagram for laying out pretty much everything from TBS Crossfire receivers to other FR Sky receivers, depending on what you're using. And it has the HD setup if you're using HD0, if you're using Avatar, also the DJI Air Unit and the Air Unit 2. So they pretty much got it covered here with all of the schematics that you need for whatever VTX or receiver you're going to use. And I got extras in my box that I'm not sure you guys will get, but I also got some smoke-colored motor bumpers in here, some extras there, so that was cool. And some extra cables for my HD setup. I got a capacitor and loads of extra M3 hardware as well, and tons of little red grommets that go along with that little flight controller. And they also give us this little sticker right here, which can stick right onto the top of the case. And if you just pop your case top off your flight controller, then you have kind of a bench schematic sticker, so to speak, of where things go on there. We have where the ESCs are plugging in, all the UARTs there, the HD unit, the LEDs, and more UARTs on this side. So that's pretty cool, and I've never seen another company do this before. So overall, this company kind of impressed me. And I say they impressed me because I thought this was just another kind of like, remember, what was the name of that company? Star something? Star Crashers. I can't even remember the name of the company, but it was kind of a cheap China knockoff company. They were making super cheap FPV parts, but I've had pretty good luck with Rush components, and this one's pretty much covered in Rush components, including the motors. STP Hobby created the frame, but it may be the same company. But I feel like this is very similar to like Axis. Axis Flying, they usually do pretty detailed stuff and they kind of reinvent the wheel. And it seems like STP is doing kind of their own thing here with this design. It doesn't look to me like a Geprc Quad, Bind & Fly, or iFlight. Anything that iFlight makes. I guess the only thing similar would be maybe like Diatone. It does remind me of Diatone with these side plates. They look very similar to Diatone quads of the past. So could it be Diatone? who knows? But it did survive today's flight test, which is super important. Very wet here in the Pacific Northwest this week and last week and the week before. But you know, we're in those winter months, and it's important to have a quad that's going to come home. I had so many quads land, like just touch the grass and fry. It's like the worst thing to see in the world. You see a puff of white smoke come out, and I literally took off with it kind of just sprinkling all over the quad today. So it's amazing that it made it back in one piece. So thanks to the side skirt, it's a conformal coating, and everything being well covered up here, this quad survived the flight test. And yeah, this is going to be one that's decent for weather. I think it's a little bit expensive for what it is. I know some of you guys aren't going to go for that $500 5-inch, but it depends on what you want. And again, I think this one has duality, because it could be a proximity freestyle beast on 6S, or it can fly some range. And I would say medium range, because you're going to want to put, for range battery, I'm going to suggest like a 6S, like 1550 on there. And you have plenty of body length on here to be able to do that. And you don't really need to run a GoPro. You can, it just depends on who you are. Not everybody's going to run a GoPro, but I felt like without the weight of a GoPro, this does great performance-wise. So send it, have some fun with it. If you get one, let me know. You can use my coupon code. It's BGDavis2022. That gets you 8% off. It's basically $40 off the HD version that I have here. So that'll make it around $480. But I appreciate you guys watching all my new tests coming out on the channel. More quads coming up. We have another live stream coming up on Friday too, if you want to hop in on that. Probably around, say, 5, 6 o'clock on Eastern Standard Time. I'm Justin Davis, guys. Take care. Please subscribe and check me out on my Patreon. I'd appreciate that. I'll see you on the next one.
Yo, now for them I chat so me now rise up in eruption. Sing it down, no interruption. Tarante on the jungle, bring the capra to the ear. One hand in the air, now skim it louder, let me hear ya.